Alright, what is up guys, it is Storm back here with another video, and in this one I am bringing you part 20 to the New Dawn and Naruto slash Boruto story. If you want to check the story out for yourself, the link to it will be down in the description below. But before the video begins, if you like the content you're seeing, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. I mean, they're all free, so why not? If you want some dope channel merch, the link that will be down in the description below. And if you want to see more of me, go check out my other channels and go follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, which will all be linked down below. But without further ado, why don't we just dive right on in. The days leading up to the tournament were filled with boredom for Boruto. They passed slowly and languishly. He had a routine. Wake up, eat, bathe, and dress. Receive a D-class mission from the Hokage's office while avoiding his father. Create a clone to do said mission, having it transform into a random person so that no one knew the great and mighty Boruto was performing such menial tasks. Train as hard as possible without revealing his true strength to his Anbu tail. Return to his penthouse with the 5 elements, sleep, repeat. It was much more strenuous than it sounded, but maybe that was because of his poor condition. The 250,000 Ryo he received for fixing that cage fight was definitely not worth having to endure 3 broken ribs, a concussion, a broken nose, and several fractured bones in his face. Not to mention how awkward it was to explain why his face was bandaged so heavily. Apparently, no one believed there was a man alive who could mug him. It was especially awkward when Sarada told him Shikadai had bet 10,000 Ryu on him during his fights. There was no worming his way out of that lie. Luckily, after many apologies and much begging, Sarada blissfully agreed to heal him. Boruto didn't think the prods were necessary for the Mystic Palm. Ikari had certainly never done such a thing, but he withered it without complaint in atonement for his duplicity. Guests from all around the world were converging on the leaf. There were civilians and ninja alike, coming to see the best that the world had to offer. Competitors came from the Shinobi Union, including samurai from the Land of Iron as well as countless others. The grass, waterfall, sound, rain, valleys, moon, and snow all sent participants. Still, there were even more. Men and women from countries without villages. The land of plains, far to the south of the land of wind. The land of volcanoes, west of the land of earth. The land of mountains to the north of the land of lightning. Boruto even saw a few heads of crimson hair, clearly Uzumaki clansmen. They wore other headbands, but Boruto knew they were attending as the Hidden Eddy. The foreigners were the most interesting. The land of plains was located on a plateau of barren sand that just stretched on for miles and miles. Far to the south of the land of wind. Not even the sand dared to venture into that wasteland. There were no trees, no rocks, no mountains. Just an endless expanse of nothing. And the people that called it home were as strange as they were fascinating. They lived beneath the surface, where it was cool enough to survive. They grew moss and cave and drank from underground pools of water. Hunting was a capital offense, punishable by death. All animals, as rare as they were bred to provide milk and eggs. When an animal became sick, or if there was a surplus, only then were they butchered for meat. Boruto nearly broken down in tears of laughter the first time he saw a ninja from the plains practically worshipping a cart that sold meat products. That had only lasted until the man had swept him off his feet with a gust of wind laced with sand. It cut like the wind, but shredded like stone. Had the man truly wished him harm, Boruto had no doubt he could have cut his legs from his body with ease. It was the largest gathering of ninjas Boruto had ever seen, heard, or read of. If nothing else, this day would be recorded in history for that alone, let alone the glory of the battles. And the leaf's economy was booming. The city was practically overflowing with people. You couldn't walk down a street without being shoulder to shoulder with someone else. Shops and food carts sprung up all over the city, some traveling from as far away as the Rock and Cloud to peddle their wares. Although Boruto didn't often praise his dad, Naruto did one thing right when he decided to be the first host of the tournament. The leaf in the Land of Fire would benefit from it for years to come. "Come on, Boruto," Himawari yelled, pulling him forward by the sleeves of his jacket. "I don't want to be late." Alright, Boruto responded, picking up the pace. He, his sister, and their friends were making their way through the thick vegetation towards the arena. Naruto had cleared a section of the forest away to make room for the massive stadium. Impressive did not even begin to describe it. The arena was a towering monolith of stone and metal. The walls were over 100 feet tall, atop which sat colorful banners proudly displaying the character for fire. The entrance was a set of double doors nearly as tall as the arena itself. 4 pairs of ninja were required to open and close them with earth jutsu. Inside, a series of hallways ran in both directions, circling the arena. There were vendors for food and merchandise there, as well as several places to place bets, both legal and illegal. Boruto's jaw went slack as he entered through one of the gates that led to the arena proper. Nestled in the arena were too many seats to count, even if he had used his Byakugan. They ran from up close, right next to the arena floor, all the way up to the tops of the walls where they were nothing more than a dot. A section had been reserved for the leaders of their respective villages and nations in the form of a series of walls-protected metal boxes. A viewing window allowed the occupants a stunning view of the entire arena. Looking down, Boruto could see the ring. It was a hexagonal piece of metal, set in the center. For each section of the hexagon, there was a different terrain: ocean, desert, mountains, forests, urban, and marshland. There was a grating sound of metal on metal as the 4th section detached from the others and sank below the ground, only to be replaced by a floor of stone. One by one, the others followed suit, and it was hot. The entire arena was sweltering from the combined temperatures of so many bodies. The stands were full, so much so that there were people standing and loitering wherever they could find a good vantage point. There were simply too many people and not enough seats. It was even louder. The clamor of people, their idle small talk, their breathing, even the sound of them walking, creating a thunderous roar that blotted out all sound. It was hard to even think. "Where are our seats?" Boruto mouthed to Sarada. She seemed to get the hint, nodding and activating her Sharingan. Boruto watched as she scoured the arena. After a few minutes, she tugged on the sleeve of his jacket and pointed towards a row that had been reserved for them. Himori dotted off, scampering over to their seats. Boruto made sure everyone followed him and Sarada as they made their way over. If they got lost, there was no way they were going to be able to find each other again. They didn't have to wait long. A pillar of stone rose from the center of the ring, atop of which stood a single man. He was an older man, but he held himself tall and proud. His hair was a mix of gray and white. A series of bandages were wrapped around his head, but why, Boruto didn't know. He wore armor from a bygone age, and at his hip rested a long katana. He was a samurai, and one who was famous. Mifune, general of the Land of Iron and one of the most powerful men in the Shinobi Union. He was also worth quite a lot of Ryo, if you had the right contacts. The lights died, plunging the entire arena into darkness, save for a single beam of light that illuminated Mifune. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first Shinobi Union World Tournament," Mifune declared, his voice booming throughout the arena. There was a thunderous round of applause that actually shook the arena. "Tonight, we have come together to witness the opening ceremonies, presented by our hosts, the Hidden Leaf." Another round of applause. Boruto held his hands to his ears in a futile attempt to drown out the sound. "Tomorrow," Mifune began, motioning with his hands for the crowd to quiet. "Tomorrow, the qualification rounds begin. Many will enter, few will proceed. Only our strongest and brightest shall be given the honor of competing in the main event." Boruto flinched as he felt hands touch his own. Sarada gave him a small smile of reassurance as her hands glowed green and Boruto felt the pain in his ears recede. He gave her a boyish grin that he hoped said thank you. "It is our hope that this will be the first of many peaceful competitions between our nations, and that future generations may never have to experience the horrors of war that we have," Mifune declared, a hint of emotion coloring his voice. "Now, let the ceremonies begin," Mifune roared, punctuating his declaration with a swing of his sword that echoed metallically throughout the entire arena. The light illuminating the old samurai died, plunging the stadium into darkness. Boruto blinked, feeling overwhelmingly tempted to use his Byakugan. He resisted and was rewarded with the sound of drums beginning to beat. They played a tempo of fast bass sounds that echoed off the walls and ceilings. After a few moments of music, Boruto blinked as suddenly, countless hidden ninjas exhaled fire far above them. Fire coalesced in a massive roaring inferno in the center of the arena ceiling, almost like a fox sun. It painted the arena an eerie shade of yellow-orange and flickering shadows. Below, water erupted in great waves, surging forward and inundating the arena floor. The drums increased in tempo, playing a melody that reminded Boruto of a heartbeat. Ever so slowly, the waters receded, leaving the land dotted with rivers and lakes. The sound of rocks cracking could be heard, even over the beats of drums. Massive trees erupted, forming vast swaths of forested land that covered the entire arena floor. Boruto couldn't hold back a strangled gasp of awe at seeing the fabled wood release. From the darkness leapt countless men and women, dressed in traditional clothes that no one had worn for hundreds of years. They drew swords and clashed in a meadow. More came forth, dressed in archaic white robes with shaved heads. From the earth came a massive statue of a portly man with many arms. Standing in front of it was a monk with sharp eyes and a scar that ran from his forehead to the back of his skull on the right side. Boruto recognized him instantly from the bingo book. Sentoki of the Thousand Fists, head monk of the Fire Temple. Some of the fighting stopped, quelled by the appearance of the monks, but two groups in particular continued to wage their war. Dressed in maroon-colored armor, they charged into battle, one set led by a man with flowing brown hair wielding a sword, the other led by a man with long, spiky black hair and a war fan. They fought and fought, each side whittling the other forces down, until eventually, it was the only two men left. The two men grew tired and eventually dropped their weapons. Boruto watched as they acted out an exaggerated conversation. Then they shook hands and all the fighting stopped. The ground rumbled once more, and a wall of stone erupted from the forest. Then it had the face of a man Boruto knew very well. The first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. From the earth, buildings sprang up, forming a crude small village. The two men stood over the village smiling broadly. Time passed, signified by the increased tempo of the drums that played the beat of our racing heart. Boruto watched, amazed, as the trees created by the wood release went through the seasons. The leaves turned yellow and orange, falling to the ground. Then they sprouted once more, above the artificial sun burning brightly. The passing of the seasons repeated quickly before Boruto's eyes. The man whom he now knew to be Madara Uchiha faded back into the shadows, leaving Hashirama alone. Eventually, he too faded to shadow after some time. A new man took his place, wearing a wig of thick white hair and red-colored war paint. A new face appeared on the Hokage rock, that of Tobirama Senju. Then, time passed, and Tobirama faded as well. Hiruzen Sarutobi took his place. His face was added to the monument. Soon after, Boruto's grandfather appeared. Then a giant shape dropped from the sky in the form of a titanic orange fox. The fourth Hokage and the Nine Tails battled, before the fox disappeared in a wisp of smoke and Minato Namikaze faded away. Hiruzen appeared again, briefly before being replaced by Tsunade. Boruto was pleasantly surprised to see that it was the real 5th Hokage, not an actor. She too faded, eventually replaced by Kakashi Hatake, also in the flesh. He looked tired, and wore a casual robe with his signature mask. Then finally Naruto appeared, wreathed in the chakra of the Nine Tails and glowing softly in the dark. By the end, what was once a small village of cobblestone houses had expanded into a burgeoning city of towering metal buildings mixed with classical wooden houses. The Hokage rocks sported all 7 faces of their leaders. The tempo of the drums began to slow, the sun above them fading as the beat did, until the arena was cloaked in silence and darkness once more. Then the cheering started. It was thunderous, filled with wonder and respect, and eagerness for the battles that were to come tomorrow. Chants echoed through the arena, spectators declaring their own competitors the victors. The lights turned back on, and the arena was back to normal. Boruto and his friends filtered out of the arena. The whole time Boruto fought to keep a grin off his face. He was going to enjoy showing the world just how good he really was. Boruto never could sleep before a mission, or battle in this case. The calm before the storm always made him tense and anxious, but never nervous. The great Bolt Uzumaki was never nervous. So there he sat, on his bed in the 5 elements at the godforsaken hour of 4 in the morning, nervously bouncing his leg up and down. Despite only getting a few moments of restless sleep, Boruto was wide awake, focused as ever, ready. There was only one thing to do. Boruto stood and began to trace the contours of his suite, head hung and deep in thought as he mentally went over his arsenal of techniques. He separated them into 2 categories, those he could use and those he couldn't. He wanted to play his cards close to his chest, just in case things in the leaf turned sour. That meant no Byakugan, no lightning armor, and definitely no vanishing Rasengan. He preferred to keep the latter in reserve. Those who had seen it only saw it once, and then they took that knowledge to the Pure Lands. Looking over at the clock, Boruto saw that barely an hour had passed. He sighed, realizing there was no way he was going to calm down before the preliminaries. He showered, popped a food pill, and dressed in his combat fatigues from the Crimson Tide. It was his 14th and last set. A pair of pants that was made of thick, dark green cloth that was both durable and flexible, and a jacket that had a mesh of chakra metal for extra protection. He was too anxious to eat. The pill would last him longer and didn't pose the threat of vomiting from exertion. Mind made up, Boruto headed for the arena. He had to stifle a chuckle as he saw many other competitors doing the same thing he was. The Shinobi Union World Tournament wasn't just about proving yourself. It was about national pride. Each ninja wanted to prove themselves, but they had the weight of their country on their shoulders too. Well, everyone but Boruto. The leaf hadn't done him any favors recently. He was there for one person, and one person only. Himself. The arena was devoid of life, except for a few workers cleaning the stands and preparing the arena to receive visitors later that morning. Throngs of men and women, ninja, all were wandering the halls and exploring the ring. Boruto had seen a little of its magic during the opening ceremonies, but he was willing to bet that at some point, the terrain would change during their fights. It would either hinder or aid them in their battle, and the difference between victory and defeat would be in how well you adapted to and used its surroundings. It was something he was exceedingly proficient in, an advantage of the other competitors who had only known peace and whose toughest battles were fought between friends and teammates. There were a handful of foreigners down in the ring, practicing and warming up. Boruto smirked, took a seat and watched them. While he doubted he would face them individually, it was useful to glean insight into certain villages' training methods. Hours crawled by, and eventually Boruto was rewarded with a commotion near one of the entrances. His eyes picked out a head wrapped in bandages, and knew it was Mifune. It was time to begin. Mifune made his way down to the ring. He drew a sword, eliciting a loud, crystalline ringing that silenced the assembled masses. Boruto grinned. "Welcome to the preliminaries," the old samurai told them. "Here you will fight for the honor of competing before the leaders of your respective nations and the masses. You'll step forward when your name is called in a timely manner, or you'll be disqualified. Fights will be fought until one opponent is unable to continue or surrenders. Murder is strictly forbidden, and techniques that maim will be harshly punished." There was a resounding silence as the veteran samurai instructed them in the rules and regulations. "Any questions?" Mifune asked. No one said a word. "Good," he said. "Aimi of the Hin Moon and Metal Lee of the Hin Leaf, please come forward." Boruto sat on the edge of his seat and leaned forward. The first match was one of his classmates. Lee and his dad were kind of crazy, but their taijutsu was second to none. Except, of course, the gentle fist. Lee proved it a moment later when he darted forward with a battle cry of the youth and quickly defeated the ninja from the Hin Moon in short order. Before either could leave the hexagonal ring, Mifune's voice rang out again. "Asuka of the Hin Waterfall and Fumio of the Hin Sound." That was an interesting match, to say the least. The Hin Sound and the Land of Sound, as a result, had been in a tumultuous period of upheaval that had only recently ended. Orochimaru taken over the country prior to the Fourth War, assassinating its lord and taking that position for himself. He formed a Hin village which was little more than a name, consisting of criminals, scientists, and freaks of nature. After his supposed death, the country devolved into turmoil as rogue factions fought for control of the country. They eventually solidified and built their reputation as a legitimate village of some regard, but it was their fighting style that Boruto was interested in. The Sound Ninja used a unique branch of wind release that created sound waves that they used in battle. They could either throw off your balance and senses or scramble your brain like an egg. Boruto cursed his luck that he had vowed not to reveal his Byakugan. He would have loved to have been able to see how the technique actually worked, and maybe copy it. The ninja from the Sound emerged victorious after a few minutes of intense fighting. Mifune called the next pair. Hachiro of the Hin Grass and Boruto of the Hin Leaf. Boruto grinned and felt his heartbeat double in anticipation. He leapt from the stands, landing lightly on the balls of his feet. His grin faltered as whispers and snickers made their way through some of the crowd. He didn't let it shake him though. That was the key. Eiji told him that if he looked strong, even if he wasn't, people would think he was. Fake it till you make it. The ninja from the grass looked green and nervous, perhaps a newly appointed genin. He stood no chance. Through unspoken agreement, both began. Boruto hurled a few shuriken that hissed as they cut through the air. The grass ninja leapt away, only to come face to face with Boruto. Boruto could see his eyes widen in surprise, with a hint of fear. Boruto thought there weren't many people as fast as him. Boruto slipped into a quick Uzumaki-style sweep, knocking his legs out from underneath the genin, and elbowed him in the gut as he fell. The grass ninja curled into a ball as Boruto placed his boot over his head and looked at Mifune. The old samurai nodded once. and called forth the next pair of names. Boruto walked back to the stands, his hands held behind his head with an arrogant grin on his face. The preliminaries would be a piece of cake, and they were. Boruto beat each of his opponents with varying ease, none of them which provided him with the excitement and adrenaline rush his battles with the Crimson Tide did. The most interesting part of the prelims were the fights that weren't his. Seeing the techniques of the sound, moon, and waterfall were the most exciting. Boruto cheered for his friends during their matches, of which Sarada was doing the best. She fought a cloud ninja whose specialty was swordplay, who got a first-hand taste of the Uchiha fire release. That had been funny, watching him roll on the ground and extinguish the flames looking at his scarf-cloaked garment. By the end of the day, what was once thousands of people mulling around the ring and in the stands was reduced to no more than a few hundred. Boruto was glad that he wouldn't be in the main tournament alone. Sarada, Mitsuki, Inojin, Middle Lee, and much to his pride, Himawari had all qualified. Shikadai surrendered to his opponent when their fight stretched on for over 30 minutes. Lazy bastard. While Chocho was defeated by a rock ninja who could use a lava release. Both losses were simply due to bad matchups. That night, Boruto managed to drive away the feelings of anxiety he had and slept soundly. The knowledge that he had secured his place in the main tournament, and that he had spied plenty on his potential opponents, let him rest easy. So, bright and early the next morning, the tournament commenced. Boruto and many other fighters arrived early. Some of them didn't leave, Boruto thought. Those were the nervous ones, the ones that were going to lose. As the dawn gave way, spectators filled into the stands. The arena went from quiet as the grave to a dull roar. Boruto and the rest of the competitors were given access to a special sitting area that was divided by nation. Several security staff were on hand to ensure none of them got into a brawl before their match, and to keep the spectators away from them. Boruto wrung his hands with excitement as he saw the boxes fill up with world leaders. He saw, and ignored his dad. Tsunade and Kakashi sat to his right, with Gaara on his left. To his great displeasure, the fourth Tsuchikage was present, as she should be, but her comments during the Chunin exam still echoed in his mind. She had been quite vocal about her disgust with him. As his eyes darted down the rows of the powerful and influential, he broke into a wide smile as he caught a head of faded crimson hair. The Uzumaki had come, after all. He waved at her and flashed her a smile, to which she returned with a barely perceptible nod. It was all the recognition he needed. It was even better when his dad raised his hand to wave back at him, only to realize he was waving at the Uzumaki. Boruto couldn't be sure without his Byakugan, but he was willing to bet that his dad's cheeks were a cozy shade of red by the way he was sulking. Good. After what seemed like hours, eventually they decided to begin. Mifune appeared atop his pillar of stone again, the lights focusing on him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "welcome to the Shinobi Union World Tournament. The rules are simple. Your strongest will fight until they can no longer do so. Opponents will be chosen at random, and be given a random terrain to battle on." The entire arena went silent, and Boruto felt his own excitement bubble up. "Begin," Mifune commanded, swinging his sword with authority. The lights dimmed ever so slightly, and a large screen lit up. 2 columns of faces began to spin rapidly, blurring their identities. Boruto prayed he went first. People remember the first, the last, and the best. He was going for a record, setting 2 at once. First and best. Boruto Uzumaki. That was the headline. The first column slowed and slowed and slowed. "Shinki of the sand," Mifune roared. The crowd, especially the section where the sand was seated, erupted into raucous applause. Boruto prayed harder. First and best. Boruto Uzumaki triumphs over Shinki of the sand. It got even better. The second slowed. Boruto saw a flash of his distinctive blonde hair roll by and felt his spirits wither and die. The column slowed and slowed and slowed. Versus Sarada Uchiha of the Leaf. The Leaf and Sand sections were applauding so loud that Boruto stumbled as he jumped to his feet. "Ah, shit," he swore, running down to where he had seen Sarada sit. He saw Shinki leap into the arena, floating on a cloud of iron sand, to which the sand grew louder at seeing. "Sarada," Boruto called, catching her just as she put her foot in the divider between the seats in the ring. Boruto grabbed her by the shoulders, turning her so she faced him. "Alright, remember what I said? Heat beats magnetism. Heat the iron and he can't control it. It's pretty difficult to get fire that hot, so..." Sarada silenced him by pressing an index finger to his lips. "Relax, Boruto. I've got this," she said, before leaping down into the ring. Boruto opened and closed his mouth, trying to process what had just happened. Sarada strolled across the arena to the center of the ring with a spring in her step. This was her chance to prove herself. It could be the boost she needs to catapult herself into contention for the position of 8th Hokage. She wouldn't lose. She couldn't. Shinki stood in front of her, his iron sand swirling around him like a cloak. He had his skeletal puppet, which, now that she got a better look at it, reminded her vaguely of her father's skeletal Susanoo, and was staring her down. She felt their eyes shift as chakra coursed through them, bleeding red and becoming the Sharingan. She knew without looking that two Tomo had sprouted. She had yet to awaken the third, even after much training. It was unfortunate because she would probably need it if she wanted to defeat the powerful magnet release user. "Remember what I said!" Sarada heard Boruto shout behind her. It was kind of endearing how he tried to help her, but she had trained and prepared for this tournament extensively, with and without Himawari. She prepared for every eventuality, fighting her friends, fighting her enemies, and especially fighting against bloodline users, of which magnet release had been at the top of her list, thanks to her defeat in the Chunin exams. The screen that declared her match changed, 2 more columns spinning rapidly. The left column slowed and stopped in the picture of an urban landscape of ruined homes. The right stopped on a barren plain. Sarada felt the ring shift. The center was a massive hexagon of metal with the characters for Shinobi etched into it. There were 6 sections that stretched out from each corner of the hexagon, forming an even larger hexagon still. The 3 sections that formed her half of the ring detached and were lowered below ground, only to be quickly replaced by 3 sections that contained nothing but flat, dusty land. Opposite Sarada, Shinki's half was replaced by a small, ruined village of wood and stone buildings. It was an engineering marvel, to be sure, one that Sarada realized did not fall in her favor. There was likely metal in Shinki's half of the ring, and thus another weapon to use against her. She'd have to be careful. The arena went silent. "Begin," Mifune commanded, then erupted into roars of cheering. Shinki instantly flicked his wrists, sending his puppet careening towards her at high speeds. Half of his iron sand stayed with him, but the other half coated the skeletal puppet like armor. An arm came up, clawed and vicious, and swung at Sarada's face. But Sarada was even faster, and certainly faster than any puppet. She moved at speeds that Construct couldn't hope to match, dodging and delivering a powerful kick as she did so that sent a wave of iron sand back towards Shinki. Sarada was quick to retreat and make sure no sand had slipped onto her person. She growled in frustration as the puppet came away from her kick without any damage. The iron sand made for an excellent shield. Sarada weaved a few hand seals and inhaled deeply. She'd see how well the puppet inhaled some heat. Fire release, grand fireball jutsu. She spat a ball of raging fire larger than she was tall, the signature jutsu of the Uchiha. The puppet came barreling through the fire, a sword forged from iron sand in its right hand. Sarada leapt out of the way, narrowly avoiding a nasty slash. She frowned, noting that the iron hadn't even changed color. Her fire wasn't hot enough. Just as Boruto said, a small part of her wished she had listened to his parting words of advice. Another part said she had to win on her own. Sarada fished out a kunai from one of the pouches on her waist and hurled it. It sank into the floor, a small paper tag falling behind it. Shinki's puppet advanced without heat as the explosive tag detonated, engulfing it in fire. Sarada yelped as a lance of iron sand shot out of the smoke and landed a glancing blow on her upper arm, leaving a long line of crimson that stained her sleeve. She began a lazy sprint around the arena, weaving and dodging as Shinki shot spikes of iron sand at her. As fast as she was, they all missed. She weaved a few hand seals, sending pellets of fire at Shinki. They were more to distract rather than harm. They were extinguished as Shinki erected a barrier of iron sand. Sarada took shots at the skeletal puppet, but Shinki deftly had his construct dodge, or block with iron sand. Nothing she tried was working, and duking it out with Shinki and his puppet in the center of the ring wasn't winning her the match. Sarada decided to take her chances, and sought shelter in her opponent's half of the ring. She darted into a 2-story house and quickly hid herself, suppressing her chakra. The door creaked open as Shinki's puppet inched forward. The skull twitched back and forth, its eyes darting every which way unnaturally. Sarada's eyes narrowed as she realized his puppet could also act as a second set of eyes. That would have been good information to have later. The puppet, thinking the ground floor was cleared, moved to the stairs. Sarada leapt from the closet she had hidden in, a silent battle cry on her on the tip of her tongue. She slammed her fist into the puppet and was rewarded with a set of bruised, mangled knuckles as she struck solid iron. Sarada ducked, narrowly avoiding having her face maimed by the puppet's claws, and tried a powerful chakra-enhanced kick. The force of the blow upturned the tables, chairs, and furniture, but did little to the iron sand or the puppet. The puppet swiped at her again, missed, and then opened its maw at close range. A barrage of needles shot out, peppering the couch behind her like a pincushion. Sarada saw, out of the corner of her eye, a sickly purple-colored liquid oozed down the sides of the couch. Poison? What kind? She didn't want to find out. Sarada inhaled and weaved a few hand seals. At close quarters, there was no room for the puppet to evade. She exhaled a great wave of fire that turned the wooden chairs and table to ash, setting the house ablaze. Her Sharingan searched the flame and smoke for the puppet, or its remains. She was rewarded with a kitchen sink flying at her with great speed. Sarada winced in pain as the faucet caught her shoulder on the way past, leaving a nasty bruise. Still, Sarada kept her focus on the puppet. The house was crumbling all around her, but she needed to destroy it if she was to defeat its master. Sarada breathed a stream of fire at the few untouched walls, setting them ablaze. She heard the supports groan in protest, the foundation giving way. The skeletal puppet came at her again, but Sarada dodged its strikes easily. Finally, when she could risk it no more, Sarada exhaled one ball of fire and leapt from the house, crashing through a window. The house came tumbling down, trapping the puppet inside, and hopefully crushing it beyond use. Shinki wasted no time taking advantage of Sarada's moment of weakness as her chest heaved from exertion. She felt her limbs aching and her muscles burning. It wasn't easy fighting a puppet, its puppeteer, and the ever-present iron sand. Shinki sent his iron sand cascading forward like a wave, encircling and ensnaring Sarada. She disappeared in a blur of a body flicker, desperately trying to move faster than the sand. Thankfully, it was made of iron, and not quartz like regular sand. It was much slower. Sarada hurled another kunai at Shinki's feet, ensuring that it sank into the dirt road of the street they fought in. It would take more time for him to dig it out with his magnetism that way. The explosive tag attached to its hilt flared orange before exploding. Sarada frowned in displeasure as Shinki shielded himself with the sphere of iron sand. Shinki raised both arms and held his hands toward her, palms open, fingers splayed. The buildings behind him shook and rattled as he tore pipes, silverware, pots and pans, sinks, bathtubs, and rebar from them. A storm of deadly iron projectiles floated above them like storm clouds. Sarada swallowed her nerves as Shinki sent a barrage of household projectiles at her. Her Sharingan darted back and forth, identifying each object and predicting its path of flight. With that information, she dodged, weaved, deflected, and blocked as she closed the distance between the two of them. When she was no more than 10 feet from Shinki, Sarada smirked. Electricity danced up and down her body, building in its intensity. Chidori current, Sarada barked, sending a wave of lightning in every direction. The lightning took the path of least resistance, traveling through the iron sand and makeshift metal projectiles. Some of the smaller pieces, like forks and knives, turned a pleasant cherry red color and dropped to the ground. The others were not so affected. To Sarada's displeasure, only a few stray tendrils of iron sand heated enough to become unusable. The rest coalesced into a shield that protected Shinki from her attack, and was too bulky for the Chidori current to superheat. Sarada didn't even have time to blink as a shield of iron sand lashed out, forming a giant fist and striking her in the chest. She was sent flying, rolling and crashing through the street. She felt a pain that seared through her chest, and she knew she had broken something. She was struggling to her feet as Shinki advanced, iron sand rearing up to incapacitate her. A burst of adrenaline shot through Sarada's body, giving her the strength she needed to fight past the pain and leap out of the way. Iron sand crashed into the dirt road, kicking up debris. Realizing the fight was coming to an end, one way or another, Sarada decided to use her trump card. She leapt into the air, diving through the kicked up dirt and appearing above Shinki. Shinki recalled his iron sand, coiling it around him like a snake ready to strike. Sarada reached into one of her pouches and withdrew a small scroll. She flung it open, channeling her chakra into it and undoing the seal. A muddy, brown-green, viscous liquid covered the street, soaking the dirt, Shinki, and his iron sand. Sarada smirked and exhaled fire. There was an explosion of light and heat as she lit the toad oil. A raging inferno consumed the dilapidated village, causing the nearest buildings to crumble and turn to ash. Never had Sarada been more appreciative of Himawari's gift than she was at the moment she saw piles of molten iron pooling in the dirt. Amazingly, Shinki stood at the end of the street, unharmed except for a small burn from a flame that had caught his sleeve. Lightning cracked over Sarada's hand as she darted forward. Her arm extended as she closed the distance, ready to deliver the finishing blow that would win her the match. There was a blur as an object intercepted her. Sarada wanted to cry as she felt her fist pierce the chest of Shinki's skeletal puppet. It was missing its legs, but that didn't matter to a puppeteer. Lightning coursed through the puppet, thoroughly destroying it and finishing the job. Sarada gritted her teeth and dug deep, digging up chakra she didn't know she had. She channeled more chakra into her Chidori, refusing to let it die. Instead of letting it course through the puppet, she pushed it outward, through the construct's chest. Lightning danced through the air as a bolt of raw electricity surged towards Shinki. The Sand Ninja only had a moment to widen his eyes in surprise before he was struck. Sarada saw his muscles contract forcefully, locking him in place as lightning danced through his body. After a few moments, Sarada cut off her chakra and gasped for breath. Shinki fell to the ground, his clothing charred and smoking. Withdrawing her arm and letting the lifeless puppet collapse, Sarada fell to her knees with a broad smile. Winner, Sarada of the Leaf, Mifune's voice rang out. She had won. I